Yeah, I would like to start by thanking you for providing me an opportunity to give you an account of the ICES scientific work and experience. And I'm also especially delighted as I see this as a continuation of the Memorandum of Understanding between ICES and CIESM that was signed in the summer of 2012. And what I will do during my presentation is that I will give you a very quick insight into ICES, our organization, community, and working fields. I have been told not to talk about any organograms, and I will only show one, but I won't talk around it. With outset in developments and signals in the marine environment, I will give you 3 examples and relate this to how such issues are addressed within ICES, as well as within the Memorandum of Understanding between ICES and CIESM. And finally, I will use this to stress the cross-cutting force of ICES, which has been now strengthened through the cooperation with CIESM, stemming from the interrelation between data and information, science and advice. And what I will do in this way is that I will be dealing with the underlying conditions and preconditions for ICES being able to give advice in a management context. So very shortly, ICES is a marine science corporation dating back to 1902. We got our legal foundation in 1964, and our main aim is to collate, to synthesize, and to coordinate marine science. And this will then enable us to provide the best available evidence for use by decision makers. We have altogether 20 member countries, all the countries that are bordering on the Baltic Sea, and all Northeast Atlantic countries, and in addition to that, also US and Canada. And importantly, here we are also cooperating with affiliated institutes from around the world, South Africa, Peru, Chile, Australia, and New Zealand. And here again, we have established strategic partnerships, such as the one with CIESM on scientific priorities and on common activities of the 2 organizations. The network and the community of ICES is broad, and it's covering 360 institutes. There's a network of more than 4,000 scientists, of which 1,600 are annually involved in the ICES work. And I think it's here important to state that these are scientists coming from more than 45 countries. And we then have more than 100 scientific expert groups that are carrying out work ranging from a number of issues on marine ecosystems and ocean sustainability. And we are cognizant of the need to encourage the participation also from outside the member countries' governmental laboratories, such as university scientists and scientists from other research organizations, as I have tried to display in the lower part of this slide. And that much time is devoted to the ICES work. You can see from this slide, and this is showing the number of days, of expert days per country in a 3-year period. And mind you, this is only the time that is actually used within the meetings, and we all know that there is a lot of preparations around these meetings, prior to the meetings and after the meetings. Now I will now come to my first example. This is work on ocean climate. And I'm sure that you all know these figures that I'm showing on this slide. These are the first one that you see on your left-hand side. Is the latest figure from the IPCC report, and it's pointing to areas where we have seen the largest increase in the water temperature, and red is the areas that have been worst hit. And as you can see, this covers the Atlantic. In ICES, we annually issue a report nicknamed the IRAC, the ICES report on ocean climate, and the basis work for this report that's carried out in one of our working groups on oceanic hydrography, which is closely following the oceanic conditions in the ICES area by updating and reviewing results from standard hydrographic sections and stations. And importantly, the data and the data sets are available for scientists to use. And I'm not going to click on this because we did a test and it didn't work. But if you yourself try to go on the internet and to go on the ICES web page, you will be able to navigate the data, and you can put the cursor over specific of these stations and you will be able to see the data behind those. We also have a working group with another organization, USPA, in the Northeast Atlantic on ocean acidification, and where we are looking into the design of monitoring programs. And we have just recently issued a report on one aspect of this, namely the chemical aspects of ocean acidification monitoring. In addition, ICES has a strategic initiative on climate change and impacts on marine ecosystems, and this is conducted jointly together with our sister organization in the North Pacific, and we, together with PICES, organize various joint workshops, symposia, and sessions. There is an upcoming third symposia on climate change in 2015 in Brazil, and during the 2014 ICES Annual Science Conference, we will have ICES experts that are dealing with ICES climate change initiatives that will tell about how they have been given input to the IPCC fifth assessment report. Now, all of this touches upon the scientific priority between ICES and CIESM on operational oceanography, as well as the joint activity between ICES and CIESM on data and information management, including development of marine information technologies. This leads me to my second example, and I would like to show you a graph from Nature. This is presenting how decision makers to a larger and larger extent are starting to base their decisions on the scientific advice. And for fisheries, ICES is the scientific advisor to all competent authorities in the Northeast Atlantic. As you can see on this slide, we're giving advice on more than 250 stocks. This is single species advice, but I think what is very important also to take note of is that ICES has also started to give multi-species and mixed fisheries advice, and where we see that we need a further dialogue together with the management authorities, and we have also a long track record when it comes to the environmental advice. Now, based on the fisheries advice, which is given by ICES, it's possible for us to make overviews of trends in mortality and in catches. And here it's very important to note that the drop in the pelagic catches in recent years is not due to a decreasing fishing mortality, but it's due to recent low recruitment for two very large fish stocks, blue whiting and Atlanto-Scandian herring. And actually what we can do now within ICES is that we can show graphs of decreasing fishing pressure, increasing stocks, and also stable catches, and that altogether means that we have lower ecosystem impacts, that we are looking into recovering fish stocks, as well as stable, and maybe also in the short future, increasing catches. This is due to many factors, and some of them include the long-term management plans that have been put in place for many stocks, which means that we are binding decisions a bit. It also is due to the fact that we have better control regimes in place in most of the areas, and also due to the fact that the industry is now more integrated in the science and advice process. The ICES advice is being translated into so-called popular advice, which is an attempt to reach a broader audience, and where we are trying to use a format that is intended to be more accessible, describing the fisheries and the fish populations that they rely on. And this again is related to the common activity that has been identified by ICES and CIESM on science communication and on the use of social media. Now, recognizing the importance on stock assessment methods, ICES has been arranging a World Conference on Stock Assessment Methods this summer in US, where we had 220 participants from 27 countries. And we also started up that conference with a 2-day workshop where we were providing a comprehensive comparison among assessment methods. One of the outcomes of the workshop is that a global initiative is needed to synthesize developments in stock assessment methods, and also meaningful strategic investments is needed to support stock assessment research. And there has been a suggestion to establish a multi-agency global assessment working group that ICES could be chairing. Now, this leads me to my third and my last example, which relates to the recent published population index, which is showing the state of the world's biodiversity through trends in population of vertebrate species from terrestrial to freshwater to marine water species. And while I have just shown you that ICES is well known for providing evidence-based advice on fisheries management, there is a need for science and advice to go beyond the traditional assessment on the status of fish stocks. And the new ICES strategic plan that was adopted last week by the ICES Council, that commits to further building a foundation of science that depends on improving our understanding on marine ecosystem, and that will then be producing the integrated advice which is needed by decision makers and which is based on timely and accurate data and information. This is also seen as in support to the Convention on Biological Diversity, to the World Summit on Sustainable Development, and also specific EU-related directives, all of which are interrelated legal frameworks and which all require an integrated understanding of marine ecosystems to support an ecosystem-based management of our oceans. I am going to explain this slide. It's not as bad as it looks, but what we're trying to show here is the interrelation between science, data and information, as well as the advisory work. And if you start by looking on your left-hand side, we have to say that this is the purely scientific work, because in order to achieve an integrated ecosystem understanding, we know this is a considerable challenge, and we need then to look into the internalities and the externalities. We need to find out all the internal processes that control the ecosystem dynamics. This is the first pillar that you see on your left-hand side, and we need to understand the external pressures and the impacts on the ecosystems. And the ICES science also needs to evaluate the goods and the services that are delivered by marine ecosystems to the human societies, because this is the only way how we can provide the context in which scientific advice on the status of ecosystems and the science-based options for management and governance can be delivered. And this means that we are going outside the natural science, and we're also going into the socio and economic science. Now, across all of these, you see one box that is going across all of those at the bottom of the slide, and this is the enabler for carrying out all of this work. This is the observation and monitoring program. Because if we need ecosystems to be assessed in an integrated manner, then we also need the development of ecosystem surveys at the relevant scales and across trophic levels. And we also need some data products that are fit for purpose coming out of these monitoring programs. And to ensure that the advisory process keeps pace with the scientific achievements, and also that science is fully aware of the advisory requests, we need some kind of effective communication. And this is what you see outside the box, and which we have called the benchmarking process. It might be a bit of an internal jargon that we're using within ICES, but this is the way how we evaluate that we use the best methodologies in our assessment and advisory work. This is where we have to see that we also have a progression towards identifying new science developments that can be used in furthering our ecosystem advisory capacity. And all of these activities are again related to various of the scientific and common activities that have been identified by ICES and CIESM in our Memorandum of Understanding, such as eco-regime shift and the economic valuation of ecosystem services. And I'm just going to show you how some of this data is available on the ICES website. And this relates both to ISO metadata, it relates to the taxonomic segmentation, thematic, as well as on a region and sub-region level. And likewise, I would like to say also that it has been supported by a decision by the ICES Council to further support the transition towards integrated ecosystem understanding by establishing a special science fund, and a request for such research proposals that are to be supported by this fund will go out next month, and more information will be available on our website. So in conclusion, and what I would like especially to emphasize of the strengths from the work of ICES and what ICES is offering in cooperation with strategic partners such as CIESM is that naturally when we are talking about the oceans and the seas, we need international cooperation, and this is exactly what ICES and CIESM is about. In addition, and importantly, and I think that this is where ICES to some degree differ from other organizations, is that our cross-cutting force lies between the linkage that we have between data and information, science and advice, and in the integrated and adaptive process that we have set up in linking these three pillars. We start by planning the international research vessels, which includes sampling methodologies and frequencies for carrying out these. We have more than 1,200 days at sea during more than 109 surveys, and we are operating this fleet as one fleet, meaning that that all countries will benefit from the surveys. We then have a facility where we are sharing the data that are coming from these surveys. We ensure that they are quality controlled before we make them available to the science. And the data and the science that are then coming out of this is transformed into policy supporting advice. And very importantly, and also related to what the last speaker said, the work is based on a legitimate process, meaning that it's open and transparent for stakeholders. It's fully documented. There is a peer review, and it's open and accessible on the websites. And I think that in times of economic constraints, it's also important to say that this combination is in addition cost effective, because it ensures that we are sharing internationally. And it also ensures that the data collection is adapted to policy relevance and science needs. And it ensures that we have an injection from science to advice, but also a feedback from advice to science. And through our cooperation with CIESM, I am sure that we will further this and expand this scientific knowledge and its application. So thank you very much.